Greetings, opera lovers! Live from somewhere unknown in New Jersey, it's Rona. I'm usually from Bloomfield, Connecticut these days, but I've traveled into New York and now it's a family visit with our children and grandchildren in New Jersey. I came in to see Der Fliegende Holländer, one of my very favorite operas by Wagner, one of my very favorite opera composers. I've seen this opera many times. I've also heard it in concert version, and it is one of the few complete operas that I own on a set of CDs. You could count on probably one hand the amount of complete operas that I do own. So it's an opera that I'm fairly familiar with, although I am by no means an expert on this opera. I was looking forward to this so much because I had heard the lead character, the Dutchman, here played by Michael Fola, a German bass baritone. I had heard him a few seasons back. I thought he was very good, and I thought he'd make an excellent Dutchman, and he did. But we'll get to the singers later. So you know how in reviews they always start off with the staging, the scenery, the designers, the lighting. Well, I'm going to start with that now too, because it was so disappointing. I know this is an older production, but that has nothing to do with why it's not any good. First of all, I think a production should serve the opera. It has the ability to enhance your enjoyment. I don't think it should ever take away your enjoyment, and that's what happened in this opera. So it starts off the curtain parts, and we are treated to one of those bleak, dreary, and very dark settings depicting the ship of Daland. And I don't mind dark and dreary, but I couldn't even tell where anything was. And it had fog, too. So it wasn't really a pretty thing, but the singing was quite good. And then the second scene, which takes place in the home of Daland, where all the women are busy spinning, and we get to meet Senta, that was much lighter and brighter. And then, of course, the third scene is back on the ship. However, how about what the singers do? Like stand around and don't interact with the other singers. This is actually criminal in the duet between Senta and the Dutchman. I think it is one of the most erotic duets ever written. I would put it right up there with the Tristan and Isolde duets. It's very subtle, this tension, the building and them singing together, not really together. Is it harmony, one and one? You know, he sings, she sings, then they sing a little bit together. It's just a beautifully constructed scene. And he sang over here and she sang over there. And you have to see it like this. The screen is too small for my hands. That's how far apart they were. They were really far apart. They didn't look at each other. It was dreadful. But the worst part of the opera, now I know I'm not going to spoil this for anybody, because as you know, at the end of the opera, Senta leaps from the ship, hurls herself into the ocean, and dies so that the Dutchman can be saved from his life of misery, and he's allowed to die, which he was not allowed to do. So, she does not jump. I don't even know what she did. She just was on the stage, then she wasn't on the stage. Then you know how the music gets very soft, da 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 da, like that, and then it just like sort of it makes for like a daybreak or something, and the background of the mat it sort of changes the shapes into nothing. I mean, I kept waiting for something to happen. Like maybe the shapes form two souls rising to heaven. God only knows. Something, but nothing. And so, like, hello, why did they do that? It just made me like scratch my head. Who did they hire? And why didn't anybody notice that this was really terrible? Okay, now I've talked more than I should really talk about the production, because do you think anybody says, let's go to the Met and see the new production or the old or the remounted production Dutchman. Absolutely not, ever. Although actually, that's not really true. There have been some terrific productions at the Met, some that really are worthy to go to just for them. But it's usually the singing that makes people want to go. And in this production, the singing was superb. But before you can speak about the singing, you have to speak about the conductor, Yannick Nézet-Séguin. If you're listening to this blog, I'm going to bet that you've already read all the reviews about how the orchestra members on opening night hurled roses at him in recognition of the fact that he is now going to be their music director, and they love him, and they played like they loved him. The overture to this opera, which is so well known, was majestic. It was exciting. It had nuance. It had great harmonic rhythm to it. It was terrific. And I'd like to mention another little aside about another opera I saw this season. I only saw four this year at the Met. And that was William Tell, another opera with a terrific overture. It had another terrific conductor, Fabio Luisi. And everybody knows the overture to William Tell, and everybody knows the overture to The Flying Dutchman. What was really interesting is that in the entire season, I think maybe the A++ highlight of the entire season was the William Tell overture. Go figure. Now, I love Wagner and I tolerate Rossini, and yet that's how I felt. It was just something so special. And yet the Dutchman overture was also outstanding. And then throughout the opera, Mr. Nézet-Séguin was very, very careful to have it be just a very sensitive portrayal of everything that was going on. All the details were worked out so well. There were a couple of places where things weren't together, such as in the last act where the men's chorus sings. They got a little bit, I can't remember if they got ahead or the orchestra got ahead of them, but they were not together. And at one point I thought, are they going to get together? And yes, they did. And I don't know how that happened, but the conductor was able to pull them together. So bravo to the conductor. I read on many blogs that Mr. Nézet-Séguin didn't know what he was doing. Who are these people? How do they even have the courage to say these things? And why aren't they being called out? This is the age, this is the day where we should call people out. Like, you're a moron. What do you know? Yeah, if you're so wonderful, why don't you conduct the Philadelphia Orchestra and the Metropolitan Opera? So going down the list of the singers, I have a very bad memory, so I'm forgiven for this. We start off with Daland, Senta's horrible father. He was played by Franz Josef Selig. And I listened to the first night, and during the first night, I thought he had a really big wobble. It wasn't so big in the house, although it is still a wobble. I guess that's just what you have to expect from voices like this. He did a fine job, and his wobble was not noticeable. He has a very nice voice. The steersman was Ben Bliss. That's a gorgeous voice. He reminds me a little bit right now of Paul Appleby. Of course, now people who've heard them both many times will say, oh, he doesn't sound anything like Paul Appleby. Well, to me, they're in the same category. Very sweet, light voices, but that have a lot of ping and can ride over the orchestra. Of course, in size, his does not match the big leads, but excellent all around. In the role of Eric, Senta's supposed intended one, was someone who stepped in supposedly at the last minute. I don't know how last minute. His name is Ajay Glickert. I thought he had a beautiful voice, was an outstanding musician, did extremely well. There are many times where he sang by himself and his voice filled the hall. The only problem was when he sang with the other singers or the orchestra played loud, they drowned him out. Something should be done to fix this balance because he was an outstanding addition to the cast. Also in the last minor role of Mary was Dolores Zajic. Again, on the Sirius broadcast, I thought her voice sounded a little wobbly. Not a hint of wobble at the Met. That woman is truly amazing. Her voice sounded just fantastic. If you didn't know that she was one of the greatest mezzos ever, singing a smaller role, you'd say, wow, that woman has such a future at the Met. She was really tremendous. And of course, although she's not really known for her acting, after all these years of being on the stage, she has a presence. Now we come to the two leads. I already mentioned something about Mikhail Vola. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm terrible with names. His opening monologue aria is Die Frist ist which is very famous. Everybody knows it. And he got a round of applause at the end, which was amazing because it usually is not applauded. I, for one, was ready to clap. I thought it was superb. What great angst he displayed in his voice and his commitment to the acting, his gestures grand and large, really filling up the stage. He was the lead character in body and soul. He sold it. You bought it. And the audience loved him. It was a great give and take between him, the other singers, and the audience. You could feel them just flying over the footlights to embrace him. But the real star of the day was the Senta of Amber Wagner, another Wagner. I was anticipating going. Once I heard the first night, I thought, oh my God, this is a great voice. It's a great voice. This is why it's great. Huge, huge, beautiful. She can do everything. She is just the embodiment of a great dramatic soprano. She was everything, and she gave everything in that last duet. Oh my God, the high notes keep pouring out. They keep going higher and higher, more intense, and she was able to just get through it. It was just a Herculean endeavor, and she came out on top. Of course, she starts off with that beautiful Senta's ballad, where she starts off with a higher ho-ho to ho, whatever it is. And it was magical. She really got into the mood, the great evocation of this folk tale, how she felt, the two opposing themes, or maybe there are three opposing themes. It was stupendous. I have to mention two things that are not really relevant, but I would like to mention them anyway. My seatmate, somebody I'd never met before, said to me, as the opera had no intermissions, but during a little quiet time in between the next to last and the last act, she said to me, this story doesn't make any sense, does it? And I said to her, you're right, it doesn't. So yes, the story, not one of the best. The other is that I went with my great companion, Mr. Opera, who loved everything about the singing. He was just as elated as I was. So it was a great evening for opera. I was so happy to be there. I sat in the orchestra. My husband and I were able to watch Mr. Nézet-Séguin from our angle. We had great sight lines to him. We could watch him conduct, and it was just a great night. I'm so happy. So if you don't have a ticket for Dutchman, get one. If you can beg, borrow, or steal the money, you just have to go. It's a great night in spite of the crummy production. Okay, all. See you later. Have a great day.